Have you found yourself exploring spirituality, or maybe heard others around you saying that they're on a spiritual path and wondered, what's that about? Or maybe you've found yourself supposedly on a spiritual path and realizing that it's not all love and light. You're not alone. After going through a very robust and deep spiritual awakening process myself, I have uncovered what actually happens on a spiritual path. In this video, I'll be sharing the surprising truth about embarking on a spiritual path, how it's not all love and light, what a spiritual journey really entails beyond the popularized notions of spirituality, and how ultimately the spiritual path is the path of truth. Like many things in our culture, spirituality has generally been placed into a box with rules, popular trends, and ways to make money off of it. We'll start by exploring some of these popular notions, or maybe even what could be considered assumptions or misconceptions of what people might expect being spiritual or being on a spiritual path is like. There are, of course, surface level activities that many seem to associate with being spiritual. Things like meditating for hours, or traveling to sacred sites around the world, maybe engaging with psychedelics or plant medicines, maybe collecting and using crystals, practicing tarot and using oracle cards, maybe referencing things like astrology and moon cycles, perhaps thinking it implies being what we might call a hippie, just someone living modestly, free of burdens of the material realm and such. And the all too popular notion that being spiritual means moving towards focusing entirely on love and light. And perhaps a level deeper is what people may assume how spiritual people explain reality. Someone on a spiritual path may be more likely to have a reality construct based on what could be called mysticism, as opposed to organized religion or materialism from the scientific point of view. But more often than not, these notions are just byproducts of the spiritual path itself. They are not what it means to be spiritual or be on a spiritual journey. Many of these notions are in fact stepping stones for deeper exploration of self, or natural byproducts of attuning oneself to energetic and divine forces beyond the normal ways of operating in our society. But the real reason most people end up beginning a spiritual journey is usually as a result of some kind of stirring from within to inquire about deeper truths they may not have yet been opened up to in the past. Perhaps as a result of a spontaneous mystical experience, being exposed to intriguing metaphysical concepts, or just simply becoming disillusioned with the default way of moving through our world, prompting a quest for something more. Here's where the truth of the spiritual path begins to reveal itself. As someone embarks down this path, what inevitably tends to happen as one begins to open up to higher wisdom is someone begins to raise their vibration, or raising their frequency from where they once were in the past. Essentially, they begin to expand their consciousness. That is the simplest explanation of what is really happening on a spiritual journey: the raising of one's frequency and the expansion of one's consciousness. What is the natural byproduct of someone who begins raising their vibration from a lower level of consciousness to increasingly higher levels? To put simply, one's awareness begins to expand. And the way awareness expands is in all directions. It is impossible to expand one's consciousness in a singular direction and continue to keep oneself blinded in other areas of consciousness. What happens as one begins to expand their consciousness in all directions? Inevitably, one becomes aware of things that they were not aware of before. And what kinds of things does one become aware of? Again, this will impact all areas of existence and will be mirrored internally and externally. One will become more aware in the realm of things like physical health and well-being, mental patterns, emotional health and well-being, energetic truths and sensitivities, spiritual truths and experiences, relational truths about themselves and others, and the repressed truths of the world that we live in. This will show up perhaps in the physical domain in increasing one's awareness about how the way they may have been treating their body may not be as optimal as one thought. Perhaps their own behaviors are causing their own physical ailments, or certain foods they are consuming are actually toxic. Their lifestyle of being sedentary and indoors for most of their life is slowly draining their life force. How this might show up in the mental domain, increasing one's awareness of their own mental patterns. Perhaps they have a pattern of negative self-talk, or they have the great ability to quiet their mind at will and center themselves, or becoming aware of one's shadow aspects of their psyche that get activated unconsciously. This may show up in the emotional domain by increasing one's awareness of their unhealed emotional wounds, that their childhood may have created severe traumatic imprints, that they may have a lifetime of repressed anger that needs expressing. This may show up in the energetic domain by increasing one's awareness that there are, in fact, energetic forces at play governing major aspects of one's life and everyone's life. In the spiritual domain, this might show up as increasing one's awareness that there is an entire infinite realm of spiritual dimensions and experiences beyond our current realm that exists inside a veil of illusion. What may in fact be the most painful part of the spiritual path is seeing yourself in its fullness. Yes, there can be overwhelming magnitude and beauty, but also the raw pain that has been buried within for perhaps eons of time. Each one of these things can bring its own set of challenges to manage. But for some, an equally large or even greater challenge is what occurs in their external life. As I mentioned, consciousness expands in all directions. As one begins to make these connections within themselves, they start noticing the same in other people and in society at large. It becomes far easier to notice others who have self-destructive behaviors, limiting mental beliefs, emotional wounds, and an ignorance of the other forces that are playing out in their lives, or that our society at large is in direct opposition to living a thriving life aligned with our true natures, and that there may be, in fact, forces out there seeking to prevent our own liberation and thriving. A major thing that happens as a result of increasing awareness is that it becomes increasingly challenging to engage in behaviors that are misaligned. Essentially, what begins to happen is a person now begins to live according to the truth, to their version of the truth and what feels aligned for them, rather than defaulting to the patterns of our culture. One starts orienting themselves to a life that feels true, and it becomes almost impossible to give your energy to things that are draining. What happens as you start living according to your truth? People around you will likely get triggered. As generally speaking, most people want you to stay the same or fit into the roles that they have placed you in. So there becomes this friction between the true version of yourself that you're becoming and others' expectations, or the expectations of society. And at some point, the truth wins out. People tend, generally, to fall away from your life. There could even be relational ruptures as a byproduct of this friction. But there is generally no longer resonance with the people and things that once filled your life. On top of this, generally speaking, as you embark down on the spiritual path, you see things that you can't unsee. You learn things that you can't unknow. As you start expanding into metaphysical concepts, you may also learn that you may not be as in control of your life as you think you are, especially as you learn about things like soul contracts, karma, and inheriting ancestral patterns, and so on. This, in and of itself, can be incredibly painful for one's ego that likes to feel like it's in control. And one step further than that, you may learn that you have lived inside a realm of complete illusion, that the movie The Matrix is in fact a documentary, that nothing in our reality is what it seems, that our entire world is engineered, top to bottom, to disconnect you from yourself and your creator. These are harsh, yet inevitable truths that one will find themselves facing to varying degrees as they begin to expand their consciousness and move through a spiritual journey. To put it simply, the spiritual path is actually the path of truth. Now that my awareness has been expanded, what will I do with that awareness? What is true for me? And am I living in alignment with that? Will I live a life against my truth? Will I betray my essence and all things sacred to me in exchange for the comforts and easing of pressures of the material world? Will I allow myself to see fully? Will I choose myself and a life of integrity, no matter the costs? And at some point on this path, one inevitably realizes that aligning oneself with the total and complete honest truth will cost you everything you once knew. Your new life will cost you your old one, and hence why many are not willing to go to such depths. So while the common notion of spirituality being predominantly about love and light is clearly not the case, it is also not the inverse. It is not just bewildering revelations, life ruptures, and ego deaths. It is also the remembrance of one's true self, the expansion into all that you are beyond just this plane of existence, an opening of oneself to the infinite divine nature of self and all things, a meeting of your own soul in its infinite love, wisdom, and expression. Your identity begins to expand beyond just the surface level notions of your life and into a multi-dimensional being of the divine. You start recognizing your own vastness and complexity, and how you can never be defined by the boxes of our world or even by words themselves. And naturally, it becomes a self-perpetuating quest for knowing and expressing yourself in these ever-expanding ways. The spiritual path, with its devotion to truth, shows that it's about becoming, the highest and fullest expression of you, however that looks. If you are looking to connect deeper with your own truth, uncover who you really are as a spiritual being, or simply needing support through the twists and turns of the spiritual path, I do offer one-on-one support in these exact areas. I welcome you to check out my website link in the description and reach out. I'd be happy to meet you in whatever you're navigating. That wraps up this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.